What's good, y'all? Welcome back to the Playmakers Corner podcast. I am one of your co-hosts for today, Simon Villanos, aka Coach V.
I'm one of the other co-hosts, Cody Stauffer, and now that I think about it, this has got to be one of the... Is this the first episode with all three of us on the episode at the same time, talking at
I do believe it is. Yeah,
awesome.
It is.
Love to see it, and we're joined here, obviously, by our third member here.
Howdy, I'm Gideon Egner. If you haven't heard me before, I've been on a few of the episodes recapping games I've been to in NOCO.
There you go. He's been on almost every episode from this last year, so if you haven't heard him before, you're probably not listening to the episode. I'm just going to be honest with you.
Fake fan. Fake fan.
You're casual.
Yeah. So there you go. You should already know. He's a mainstay, right? But on this first episode, we are beginning our culture series here. A couple of years ago, let's start there, right? We went ahead and dropped one big culture episode on Colorado football, the ins and outs, recruitment, coaching, programs, all of that great stuff. This time around, we're going to split it into a couple different episodes just so it's easier to listen to. It's not a big old 4-hour podcast. And so we're going to talk about more specific topics here on today's episode here. We're going to talk just basically colleges' involvement in recruitment of Colorado athletes and just, I guess, college football in general, and how that relates to Colorado as well, because there are some relations there for sure here. So we do have a number of topics. I'm going to be a little bit of the moderator as well, and I'll let Cody and Gideon really take the wheel here once I set it up. But let's go ahead and go to our first topic here. Let's talk about out-of-state colleges, right? Recruiting the state of Colorado. I think it's fair to say in recent years it has increased and whatnot. But Cody and Gideon, what do you think? And what are some of the bigger colleges that really recruit Colorado here? Bigger or smaller, whichever, but what are some of the colleges that really recruit Colorado and commit to that year by year?
Well, I'm going to kick it off here. I did a bit of digging, and I was looking at the 24/7, I found a list that was ranking the top 50 rated players from 24/7 since 2000. And of those, USC, Southern California, had the lion's share of those recruits. A good portion of them went to places like Oregon, Michigan, but then in more recent years, especially this year, we've been seeing Wyoming recruit a lot better than any of the Colorado schools, really, when it comes to D1 level. Obviously, you've got Tell Wade, who we were able to watch in the 1A championship, who, in my personal opinion, was on across all levels that I was able to watch in person, a top 3 edge rusher that I saw. We see Jones Thomas, who is also going to Wyoming. He's one of the better defensive backs that I saw all year. He was with Pooter. And so we see Wyoming recruiting really well. We see Lyndon Wood, who was able to take the tight end QB duo out of Fossil Ridge. And then we also see Drake. I know they're in FCS, but they are really making a push, because I think it was CT Worley. I may be mixing up the Broomfield linemen in my head, but I saw that one of them visited Drake just yesterday. To be clear, we're recording this on April 2nd. Just the women's national championship just wrapped up. And so, in terms of D1, those are the ones that really recruit. And then the other one that really stands out to me for out of state is Chadron State in Nebraska. If you should be going D1, but for some reason, you're a smaller level guy, Chadron State is picking you up. So if you're a 1A or 2A guy, Chadron State is going to find you, and they are going to recruit you. And so those are the main ones out of state that I see.
Yeah, no, for sure. And that's pretty big time, because they do consistently recruit Colorado talent, I would say. And also, just because, an athlete doesn't commit to a school doesn't mean that a college isn't still recruiting them and offering them and all of that great stuff. Right, Cody?
Yeah, no, because, I mean, you look at it and a lot of these recruits, these top recruits, that is, in Colorado, they are getting offered by Colorado at times, at least when you look at like the top 10 prospects in a given year, but they're not sticking to Colorado. And then you don't really see Colorado see you digging past those top 10 recruits to round out their roster. It's like, oh, we missed out on the top tackle. We shouldn't try and get the third best tackle or what have you. So I definitely think that, performance has mattered a little bit, for CU and CSU. It's not enough for these prospects to grow up in Colorado and want to play for Colorado anymore. It's just, maybe that's how it was, but, with the lack of success, we just haven't really seen that. And from what I could look up, CU, CSU, any Colorado school has not landed the number one recruit out of Colorado since 2018, which is crazy to think about. That, they're going to Washington, they're going to Texas A&M. OU has been recruiting some of our best recruits pretty well, as far as getting Sawchuk and then getting Josh Bates, and even offering guys like Blake Purchase as well. You've seen kind of that rise. And then, I also think that the Pac-12, the rest of the Pac-12 that is, has been doing a great job of recruiting in Colorado, especially when you look at this 2023 class with, Oregon there, Arizona there, and, Stanford, all getting guys in that top 10, kind of talent and getting those guys to commit pretty early, honestly. So, I think that when you look at I want to agree with everything Gideon said as well, that Chadron State's obviously putting in a lot of legwork. And I think that Wyoming is kind of picking up those recruits that Colorado or in-state schools are kind of overlooking or maybe undervaluing when they can't get some of these top guys that are fleeing to other schools. So that's kind of my 2 cents on that. But I mean, you just even look at, even since 2018, Wyoming had, it looks like 4 of the top 24 guys. And that's pretty comparable to CSU, who had 3 of the top 24 guys, or CU that had 3 of the top 24 guys. So when you look at that top quarter of 100 prospects here, Wyoming, like Gideon said, is showing up very well. And then just other Pac-12 schools are doing very, very well in, our top 10 recruits.
Yeah, no, absolutely. Now, I do want to throw out a couple more colleges. I want to shout out the Big Sky Conference in the FCS. They recruit Colorado really well, whether it's Montana State, Sac State, Eastern Washington. Almost always comes to Colorado and gets a player or two. I mean, they've definitely been big time in that here. And then I do want to also shout out, since we're already in the state of Washington, Washington State as well. They have a really good history recently and in the past as well. Just to name off a couple players, Ty Fave of Fountain Fort Carson. He's going there. BB Hills from Vista Ridge is going there. Rocky Shields from Columbine is going there. If we want to go back into the past a little bit here, Max Borghi went to Pomona, now plays for the Houston Roughnecks in the XFL. He went to Washington State as well, and so Washington State has also done a really good job, and so just wanted to shout them out. But with that being said, let me go to Gideon here on this one to start, and then we'll go to Cody after that. But with that being said, how healthy would you say the out-of-state recruitment is, for Colorado talent? Where would you say where that is as of right now, as far as how heavy out-of-state colleges recruit Colorado? Let's say on a scale of 1 to 10, and maybe what are some improvements that could be made here?
I mean, yeah. So when I think about it, from what I've seen, out-of-state recruitment is, I mean, it's not like we're Texas or Georgia, but it's certainly stronger than a lot of places in the country. We're in a decent spot. You've got guys like Jordan Neeson going to visit UNLV. You've got, really, when Tyler Kubat, when I found out that he was going to Lindenwood, I was like, oh, dang, that's pretty far out there. They had to do their research. And like you guys were talking about, Washington State, yeah, you've got the Western University, like financial stuff. But when it comes to the recruiting, they're putting in the legwork. At least when it comes to the big school guys. I'll talk about smaller school stuff later. But when it comes to the big school guys, they're putting in the legwork. And, like, yeah, you've got schools like Arizona snapping up Braden Dorman. You've got... Now, I know Oklahoma isn't too far away, but, like, they were able to get Joshua Bates pretty well. And so, yeah, you look at that and you're thinking to yourself, yeah, that's certainly more healthy than a lot of states in the country.
Yeah, and I think that, you know, now that I'm kind of analyzing these patterns and thinking about where a lot of these out-of-state schools are, you know, at least, like, I feel like proximity-wise, a lot of those schools do really well. Kansas schools, you know, K-State especially has ramped up these past few years, and, you know, they do a great job at looking at some of those smaller, like, 3A, 4A schools, and, you know, getting guys like John Pastor, they almost have, like, an Erie K-State pipeline going on. And, you know, when I'm looking at it, a lot of these schools, or a lot of the recruitment, I should say, is coming from maybe states that aren't regarded as football states, if that makes sense. So, you know, I'm looking at Kansas, I'm looking at Wyoming, and just think to myself, well, what pool do they have to pull from, right? So they have to, you know, win that kind of border battle to get some of their better players, right? Is where I see a lot of these come from. You know, another school that comes to mind that did really, really well in the 21 class was Boise State. They ended up with a ton of our recruits. And so, you know, I mean, Iowa, not to throw any shade at Iowa football, but, you know, I think that they kind of realize the talent that's in Colorado, and maybe the states that, you know, I don't see a ton of commitments to, states like Texas, Alabama, Georgia, Florida schools. I don't see a ton of those, you know, going further south and east. And I think that's just because, you know, they automatically default to thinking that every one of their players, you know, they could go to their 40th best player and it's better than the top 10 Colorado player. Even if you look at the offers, that's not great. So, you know, I don't know what the solution to that is, but I think it's something worth noting that, you know, I don't see a lot of SEC schools recruiting in Colorado as far as where we are as a state in football. Look, if you're the cream of the crop, your players are getting recruited to SEC schools a lot more than Colorado kids are right now.
Yeah, and like, the phrase that came to mind when you were talking about that is that we're the state that people go to when they can't, like, we're the next best thing state. You know, like, we're not, it's hard to beat Texas, Cali, and Georgia, and it's hard to beat Alabama. It's hard to beat the South. But when you're looking...
Yes.
But when you're looking for high-quality players that are going to go under the radar, because they're not from the South, we're where schools go. Because they know that the only way to compete is to go for the under-the-radar guys that are just as good. It's just they don't live in those pipeline areas. At least that's the vibe that I get.
No, for sure. And pipelines are very important as well. I think as far as we could obviously go by location. And actually, let's just go with that first. I mean, as far as location goes, if you look at what schools should be a pipeline or have a pipeline to Colorado, Pac-12 for sure. You know, anything West Coast easily. That includes Mountain West as well, Big Sky. Those type of schools should always be recruiting spots like Colorado. Obviously, you know, it takes a lot less resources if you're a Georgia, Florida, or Texas to, you know, recruit Colorado. Or, sorry, to recruit your state, your home state, over Colorado and states near you, right? It's just easier. It's less gas money, it's less flight money, all that stuff, you know. Colorado is kind of up there, and I'm not even gonna lie, some of these players be living in spots not reached by I-25, the highway, and then you have to cross a couple mountains as well and all that. It gets complicated, right? You know, so there's definitely those things you got to consider, like, all right, well, how much money is it going to be to just get to Colorado and be able to access players as well? Because that's another thing, too. And that you know what? We'll save that for the coaching episode, because that is definitely on coaches, and that is also an issue that needs to be solved. But all right, well, that's pretty much a lot on our out-of-state programs recruiting Colorado. Is there anything else y'all want to add about out-of-state recruiting and all that stuff before we go to our in-state programs, which I feel like are a little bit more important here? But I just want to give y'all a chance to add on anything. Cody, do you have anything?
Yeah, I wanted to bring up, I forget where we saw this, but I remember Coach V and I were looking at this list of, best states for high school football. I remember seeing Wisconsin above us, and, something about that I just wanted to bring that up because of, the quality of players that we are sending to Wisconsin over the past few years, but just also bring up, how often Michigan is recruiting Colorado linemen and how often Colorado linemen are getting significant snaps up at Michigan as well. So I just wanted to point that out and, just throw that out there that, a lot of people, and, I think that this is a great segue as well. A lot of people will think that Colorado doesn't have the talent when really, we're sending talent to successful schools just up north and up in that Midwest area. And, I think that Colorado is not accredited with some of the success that is being sent up there.
Yeah.
No, absolutely. But shout out Jim Harbaugh up there. Gideon, is there anything else you want to say about what Cody said there? Plus, anything else you want to add?
Well, I personally really agree with what Cody said there, but kind of going back to what you said about the cost. So let's say that a coach from Georgia does hear about a Colorado talent, right? But that talent is from, let's say, they're from Estes Park. And you look at the map. Colorado's, it's not the easiest state in the world to navigate. If the best player in the state was at Grand Junction Central or Palisade or Fruita Monument, they'd be ranked to 15th because nobody really has an opportunity to see that because, what is that, a 6-hour drive from the nearest airport? And so, looking at it, it is a hard state to access, but when it comes down to it, we consistently produce quality players that go to good programs and then succeed.
Yeah, no, absolutely. And there are private airports. I know Montrose, there should be an airport there. I want to say there is, or at least hangars there. And so you can fly private. But like I said, that's just more money that you got to pour into recruiting a player who might not even pick you at the end of the day, because it is also a numbers game for some of these colleges. But with that being said, let's talk about the colleges that are close to Colorado talent, that are, basically in the backyard of all these great players and whatnot. Let's start on the D1 level first. So we have 4 D1s in Colorado as of right now. We have Colorado, Colorado State, Northern Colorado, and then Air Force. So those are our 4. If you want to, I'm just going to throw this out there as well. If you want to compare the number of D1s we have to other states like California, Georgia and whatnot, Florida, it's Ohio as well. It's not the most, it's not the most. I think it is understandable partially why not many players from Colorado are able to go D1 and why it is a special thing. But, there's still not enough that do, though, that can play on that level. I'm just putting that out there. And so there's only 4 right now. UNC, I think, is the most recent one because they became D1 in the 2000s, right, Cody? I don't expect
it was the mid 2000s.
Yeah, so even less than that. So they haven't even really been around for 20 years. Not that there's a lot of great Northern Colorado football history in the last 20 years to talk about, but I'm just saying, And so with that being said, let's talk a little bit about history here. Let's start with the one that has the name of the state, Colorado, in it. University of Colorado, the Buffs, recently taken over by Coach Prime. First, let's let's talk about pre-Coach Prime here. Under the McIntyre era and all that great stuff. I don't know why I can't think of the last head coach, but his era as well, that obviously didn't go so great. Cody, what was the history of CU like recruiting Colorado, say in the last 20 years before Coach Prime? What has that been like, in your opinion? I know you are native to Colorado as well, and you know people who have went to CU, so I want you to start this one off here.
Well, Coach V, I grew up as an OU fan, if that gives you any indication on how CU recruiting has been. I think that that's a great answer just because, it wasn't a school that just, at least to me growing up, called out because of they were a powerhouse or they were consistently competing. And that impacted people who did want to play from them, especially if you weren't from Boulder. I grew up in Aurora as well as in Centennial and Littleton. And a lot of people wanted to go to school there, but if people were serious about athletics, that wasn't really at the top of their list unless they didn't really want to live out of state, if that makes sense. So, I think that as far as CU recruiting goes, there were people who did want to grow up and be a Buff, but I don't think it's I'd imagine that, for kids growing up and playing football in Norman, that's all anyone wants to play for, more or less, is at OU. Or, if people are growing up near a specific D1 in Texas, then they probably want to grow up and play for that school or that program. Or, there's pride and more smack talk, maybe even about kids that are passionate about those schools and watching those schools growing up. But, you could probably look at ticket sales to get a good indication as far as, how interest in just CU football has been in general. There is that one good run that we had where we were competing for a conference title with, Philip Lindsay and company. But that felt like probably the most relevant it's been, at least in my lifetime, at least in my memorable lifetime. I know that early 2000s was a little bit different. Mid 2000s, there is some buzz around it. But, I just don't ever remember it being the biggest deal growing up here to want to play for Colorado, that Colorado football was, or, that, everyone grows up wanting to play for CU. I can't even think of, when I think of my middle school football team, I can't think of that many people that really wanted to grow up and be recruited by CU. It felt like everyone wanted to go to a different college out of state, or, there's maybe a couple kids. So that's kind of what I remember growing up. Now, obviously, I shouldn't speak for everyone in athletics. I don't think it's like that. But, also just looking at my 4 years at Arapahoe High School, maybe we didn't have CU caliber guys at times, but, there were also guys that were going to Montana State instead and getting opportunities and looks in that regard. I want to say that probably the best player in all 4 years of my high school career, Ethan Brunhofer, he went to Butler. And, CU is definitely in that discussion, and, he still turned left when both opportunities were there. So if that, that's kind of a first-person retelling from that, and I think that it's up to, the audience as well as YouTube to kind of interpret that as far as, the severity of it and where that sits. But for me, is kind of where Colorado recruiting has been, at least in my lifetime and thinking about it and growing up. And, I guess, Simon, I kind of want to just ask you, what was the buzz growing up in Texas as far as wanting to play for Texas schools?
Well, first off, I can't believe Cody Stauffer is saying that everyone who went to Arapahoe from 2013 to 2017 was not D1 level or Power 5 level. That's how I interpret it. That's how I put that out
there. We had grit, all right, Simon.
Y'all went undefeated. All right, okay. Well, that says all I need to know. But no, in Texas, it obviously depends on how big the school is and how big the brand is. I think brand definitely plays a big role, especially in a spot like Texas. I'm thinking UT, A&M obviously have bigger brands, than SMU. And part of that is because of the death penalty that they were given in the 80s, which Hey, still affected them decades later because they used to have the biggest brand in Dallas, the heart of North Texas football, and then now everyone wants to go to TCU.
The death penalty will get you.
North Texas.
I said the death penalty will get you.
Oh, it will. I would even. Nah, I don't want to get disrespectful now. I had to think about it a little bit, but I would say even North Texas had a little bit more of a feel to it than SMU. But also SMU is kind of, in the bougie part of Dallas. So nobody that I would know personally, because I don't roll that way, really rocked with SMU like that. But I definitely would say, everyone would have loved to play for any of the Texas schools. But also it's all about brand, right? Who has the bigger brand and all that great stuff. And in my opinion, if you look at the Texas schools, let's just focus on Power 5 for now. I would say all of them have a bigger brand than CU. Right? I think that's fair.
I would not disagree.
You can't tell me the Longhorns brand is bigger or smaller than CU's. It's not. A&M's isn't. I would say TCU's definitely isn't. I just think that's facts.
Sorry.
Go ahead.
The only arguable one there is SMU, but even then it's like, really? Is it really? So yeah, you're right. You're 100% right there. Like, every Texas school has a bigger brand than CU.
Yeah, and I would say even SMU's overall history is probably closer than CU's overall history. Is that fair to say, Cody? So if you want to talk about brand building and history, I think they're relatively on the same level.
I mean, yeah, I could see it because, they both have their highs, right? And they both have their lows, but, I think that SMU has a little bit more of, a justified low as far as, sanctions and whatnot versus CU, that the only thing that changed, I can't even quite put my finger on. You could call it a coaching change and make that focus, put that microscope on the culture and who picked it up next, and just the kind of steady decline in interest in CU football on a state level, which, does make a big difference, but what are you doing to stay competitive and relevant matters. So.
Yeah, no, absolutely. And I think definitely for sure the brand matters in getting players to come to your school. Because even if you aren't recruiting all players in Colorado, you're still competing with the top talent in Colorado because, you got teams in the Pac-12 who are recruiting Colorado better than you. Washington State, Stanford, they got Christian McCaffrey, back in the day. And so I think that's definitely, fair to say. Gideon, I don't want to leave you out of this. What do you think about what we had to say here about Brandon and all that? And, you are also another Colorado native here, well, more than me. And so what was it like with CU and their reach? I know you're a little bit more south, but, in-state's in-state.
For me, CU was always more of a... it was always more of a brand than CSU, UNC, and Air Force I lived pretty close to for most of my schooling. But outside of Air Force, CU was the bigger school in Colorado. But even living in the Springs, you always see Texas. Hell, you see Syracuse more than you see Boulder in the Springs. And so when it comes down to it, they really just, yes, they had the 90s, which CU had an amazing 90s, and you can see that in their recruiting, where, like, looking at the top players that, like, from the 24/7 score, which, there are criticisms of that, but using that as our lens of the top 50 players since they came up with that score, all but 2 of the players that CU has gotten that were on that top 50 list were between 2004 and 2008. And so those are the kids that grew up with that 90s championship team, but then for one reason or another they've only been able to get 2 from that top 50 list since 2008. And so, yeah, CU just doesn't have that presence in Colorado.
And it's totally a football thing, dude. Like, if you're somebody from out of state and you go check out Boulder and CU's campus and you see the Flatirons, that is, like, such a sell, honestly. And, I mean, as far as academics go, you know, they have a ton of programs that they offer, and, you know, they're reputable programs as well, as far as what they've been able to accomplish. And, you know, a lot of their alumni have, you know, accomplished quite a bit out of CU. So, athletically, college life, vibes, scenery, city, like, you can sell all that. So, really, it comes down to it's a football thing, in my opinion.
Yeah, like, looking at it, if you like big city, I don't like big cities personally, so that's why I decided not to go to CU, because it felt too big. But looking at it, there's a reason why Bronny James has CU on his list, according to a thing I saw, like, not yesterday, I saw this like a week ago. Like, he's down to USC and CU. There's a reason that, like, aesthetically, people like it so much. It just purely comes down to the quality of products that they've put out. And I dare say there's a correlation there between the amounts of Colorado talent they've recruited and quality of product on the field. That's just me, though.
And playing for the black and gold, like, now that and thinking about, like, now I'm going through the lens of my father who grew up in the 90s and hearing about how, you know, there is a lot of buzz in the state of Colorado for the CU-Nebraska game. And, you know, I've always heard about this buzz, and I know that I'm supposed to hate Nebraska, but growing up, I never really cared. I gotta be honest. Like, obviously, I love it when the Buffs beat Nebraska, but it's just not what it once was. It's not as good once as it ever was. So, you know, I think that that's something to consider too. And it's just, I know that guys who, you know, speak about this, who went to CU, they're a little frustrated about where it's at as well. And just how it should mean more than it does right now.
Yeah, and I mean...
Yeah.
Oh, yeah, and I'm...
Go ahead, Gideon.
I hope that Dion sees what we have. Like, because, I mean, I did see that he offered that... who was that kid from Cherry Creek that he offered, like 2-3 days ago? But, like, I saw that he offered that kid. It's yeah, he's that lineman from Creek. He had a really long name. It is... I'm blanking right now.
Hayden Treader?
Not Hayden Treader.
No. Oh, T.I.
Yeah, T.I.
Yeah.
Yeah, so I saw he offered T.I., but I hope that he's able to see what else we have and that can help people, like... Because it's not just having good products that wants people to play here. It's the coaches and the organization demonstrating that they have respect for the people here that makes you want to play here. It's the thing that makes you want to raise a family as Buffs fans, or as Ram fans, or Bears, or Falcon fans. Demonstrating that commitment to the wider community.
Yeah, no, for sure. And you know what? Let's just do it this way. Let's just talk about each college, and we'll also talk about the current recruitment class as well here. So kind of bringing it back to modern day just a little bit here. For CU, it's easy. They only have one Colorado recruit in this class of 23, and that's Hank Zelinskis out of Cherry Creek. He plays center for them. And, you know, his brother went to Rutgers, by the way. So he does come from a family of very good D1 Power 5 linemen here. So that's still a good pickup for CU. I don't want to be too hard on Coach Prime because he just got here in December, but we could definitely project into the future a little bit here. I want to pose just one question for y'all, but in your honest opinion, and I'll have Gideon answer this first, but Gideon, in your honest opinion, how committed do you really think Coach Prime is to recruiting Colorado?
I got two answers here. The first is what I hope, and the second is what I think. And granted, I'm young. I wasn't able to watch Coach Prime play. Jackson State is on the other side of the country. I wasn't really able to see too much of what they were doing. But what I really want is for him to be committed and be here for at least the next 6-7 years. Like, that's the ideal. But when it comes down to the reality of the situation, my gut's telling me that he's looking for, he's going to use this as a springboard in about like 3 to 5 years and go to an SEC or a Big Ten or he's going to use like a Pac-12 championship as a way to get to the SEC. Maybe, I don't know. I don't think Nick Saban's going to retire anytime soon, but you know what angle I'm taking there?
Yeah, I understand.
Oh, I know what angle. Yeah, I got you. So that really, basically, what you're saying is that, he's not super committed to, getting Colorado talent. Because here's the thing. When you are committed to Colorado talent, I'm going to be honest, we don't always have the best talent. Some of these guys have to sit for at least 2 or 3 years before they're even playable. It's rare that it's been a while since Colorado has had a true 5-star that could play right away, in my opinion. But Cody, what do you think about what Gideon said, and how committed do you think Deion Sanders is to recruiting Colorado talent?
When he first got here, I was definitely skeptical of him recruiting Colorado talent, and also just noting the most recent guy that I saw make a pretty immediate impact was Terrence Ferguson, who we all knew was going to be good coming out of school, and that was for Oregon, not even for Colorado, so there's that. But, at first I was skeptical, but I'm getting encouraged by these offers that he gave to some really young players, right? To T.I., the offer that he gave to DJ Bordeaux when he was here in Colorado. I'll chalk that up as a win for Colorado for now, just of when it happened. And then, just recently, the Charlie Offerdahl news and the dust that he's been able to kick up as a walk-on shows that, look, this is somebody who is overlooked by everybody, right? He chose to be a walk-on. I think that he actually has the record for most, rushing yards in school history by a walk-on in a season, I want to say. And, he's turning heads, and he has prime. Now, I don't know the validity of it. I don't know how it's going to be carried out. I'm not trying to project. But this is a literal quote in front of the team is, quote, "You keep on balling out, you ain't going to be a walk-on too long," end quote. And so if Sanders sees a walk-on from Colorado kicking up dust, turning heads in practice, then I think that only continually builds the hype around Colorado talent. And, I think that he has his ear to the ground. I'm fairly certain that, he has, or at least CU has guys in contact with huge trainers, specifically McChesney at, 6-0 and whatnot. And so I think that he has his ear to the ground for some of these, top talents. Now, I don't know how impactful this class of 24, I'm still trying to figure out here in Colorado, but I think that there's a huge class of 25 talent-wise, and I think that there's a fantastic class of 26 here in Colorado. And so only time will tell, but I do think that he, initially it didn't seem like he was even going to look Colorado's way, but I think that as, especially with this past class of 23 having so many standouts in it and, being one of the more talented classes we've ever had, I think that, he's not going to ignore, maybe not seek out very intentionally, but he's not going to ignore some of that top talent.
Yeah, and something that I'm thinking about that I think might actually play a factor is, I do go to CSU, so I'm a bit biased here, but I do think CSU is going to be better this year than they were last year. and we are playing CU in Folsom, and if like Aaron Carras, who committed here last year, if Silas Evans gets a couple of snaps, like if he sees that the talent that has come to CSU, who, I mean, I'm not going to try to claim that on paper CSU is the better team, but if he sees that the talent who's gone here is good, who is supposedly second rate to the talent at CU, then I think that could spark an idea in his mind of like, if this is the second level guys, what am I missing?
Yeah.
Simon,
no, absolutely.
What's your opinion on if you think Dion is going to recruit Colorado?
Well, I think he's going to recruit Colorado, but it's definitely going to be a little bit limited. I'm going to shout out 6-0 Academy, Matt McChesney. First off, one of the best lineman coaches in the country, and a big reason why a lot of players here in Colorado get recruited. Got to give him his dues there. And he is a CU alum, right? But I think I want to say it was on his podcast, or shoot, it was either on the podcast or on the radio, where he was talking about CU and whatnot, how Coach Prime wants to make them a powerhouse like they were in the past, and by doing that, he's going to recruit the best of the best in Colorado, period. And so with that being said, that's not like the top 25%, it's not the top 15%. I wouldn't even say top 10%. At best, I think that's the top 2%, to be honest with you. So I'm talking the guys who are 4 stars. If you are a 4-star in Colorado, you're going to get recruited by Coach Prime. And it's not like Colorado gets a ton of them. Well, outside of linemen, I should say. But you're going to get recruited by Coach Prime. That's something that's definitely going to change. If Coach Prime came to CU in years past, Terrence Ferguson, I don't believe would have been so easily pulled to Oregon. Maybe he would have. Maybe it was his dream to always play for Oregon. I get it. It was my dream too. I didn't even go Cat. But, I think he would definitely put forth a bigger effort to go get T. Ferg. I think he would have put forth a bigger effort to go get Bates and go get Purchase and go get, like, all these guys, right? Brantley as well, Miles Purchase. Mm-hmm. I think those are the guys he would go get, the true top 2% of Colorado talent. And so I don't want it mistaken here. I think he's going to recruit Colorado talent, but he's going to recruit the top 2%, just straight up. And it may look like he's not recruiting the rest of the state, but honestly, he's looking to win now. I think that's something you got to keep in mind. And, the less talented you are, maybe the more time you need to take. And so he might even really lose out on some true sleepers, but he wants he wants blue blood guys. He wants guys who could come in, contribute close to right away. If it's not on the football field on Saturdays, it's in the weight room, it's in the practice facilities, it's on practice squad. Guys like Charlie who are out there doing their thing, Dante Capolongo as well, shout out Dakota Ridge, doing their thing over there. I think he's really looking to just get top guys like that are going to contribute right away. Is that fair to say, Cody or Gideon?
I think that means something for a state that didn't have a single top 10 recruit commit in state this past season. Like, yes, that would go a long way for Colorado football if we're able to, quote unquote, retain a Purchase, a Dorman, a Bates, a Thomason, a Brackney. Like, I'm looking at this top 10 recruits here, Brantley. I'm looking at this. I'm looking at last year, how they only got 2 out of the top 10 to stay in state, and I look at 2020 where only one commit of the top 10 stayed in state. I'm like, yeah, no, that would mean something even if he's doing that, where, we're talking these guys that are going to these big time schools, and, even Gavin Sawchuk last year, for what it's worth, he did get touches in significant games, and he did have an impact, immediately for a school like OU. So I don't know if those it's at least got to be a higher percentage of those guys that we can retain. And I think that that's important for Colorado football, Colorado recruiting, and Colorado football branding in general.
Yeah, and I mean, like, looking at it, even looking at the and so this is kind of a question to Simon, but looking at I have the document here with our PMC grades from our top 5 lists, and so you're thinking it would be guys like, in terms of grades, from Josh Bates down to about like DeAndre Horn, like about 91 to 85 there?
I might even say a little bit, probably 88 and up, I would say. Just getting a little picky, right? Just getting a little picky there. And obviously the other key part to it is, if you don't need another center or another quarterback or whatever, then you're not going to recruit somebody that you don't need. That's just plain and simple, right?
Yeah, so like he's not going to try to recruit a Cole LaCrue since he's bringing a son with him.
Yeah. No, yeah. I mean, I think that's fair to say. And if I'm, a Colorado player looking to play for CU, I would definitely keep in mind that he is not just going to recruit the best in Colorado. He's going to recruit the best in the country. Yeah. You look at, how he's brought over Travis Hunter, who was a number 1 prospect. I believe Cormani McClain has already committed, so that's another big one. His son, obviously, and more transfers from Bama, from OU, from all these other different places. He's gonna consistently do that, and so you can't blame him if he recruits you and you don't play as soon as you think, because you're not just going against Colorado talent. That is not good enough. You need to be top 20 in the country in college football as well. Not high school football, college football. That's the brand he brings, because it's Coach Prime. We know he strives for excellence and all that great stuff. And that's just what he's going to do. He's going to try to win right away or give it his best shot to do that. And I do want to just kind of pose this to y'all as well. Would y'all say that whatever Colorado's brand is here in the next couple of years, is that more CU's brand or is that Coach Prime's brand? Cody or Gideon, either one.
I mean, that's tough. Because I think that the two are going to merge, if that makes sense. Because, I mean, CU had a worse record than CSU last year. And their identity for the past few years has been hot mid. And Coach Prime's identity is the exact opposite of that, taking Jackson State way farther than, like, if there was any other coach there. And I think regardless of if he stays here long term, that's going to stick for at least a couple of years after he's gone. So I think the identities are going to merge, if that makes sense.
It depends on who looks, right? Right now, it's Prime's brand. And you could see that with him going to basketball games and people celebrating that he's at basketball games. And because there's a ton of excitement and buzz around specifically his hire more than anything else right now. But to kids that are 4 years old, 5 years old, if they see CU winning Pac-12 championships and, they see guys making plays and they think, as a young kid, if you see CU winning a ton of football games, you're going to think of them in the lens of, oh, wow, CU football is exciting. Colorado football is exciting, right? Because as a young kid, you're not going to be doing the most. And if Prime does his job and these players perform at the top of their capabilities, we're going to be talking about the players in 20 years, right? Or at least those kids growing up, they're going to want to grow up to be like Travis Hunter. They're going to want to grow up to be like so-and-so at CU, right? If we're winning football games, I think that's where CU's brand starts to tick up for, this next generation and become almost that CU of the 90s. If we make a college football playoff, they're going to be talking about, these young kids are going to be like, oh my gosh, like I remember like CU going to 3 straight college football playoffs in a row, or, that would be the ideal outcome for building CU's brand for people growing up in Colorado to care about CU, I think is what happens there. And, building that kind of lasting dominance where, say Prime does leave, Look, it goes one of two ways. He stays here for it to be about CU's culture, that is. Prime stays here for a very, very, very long time. We have an incredible amount of success where, it's kind of like Bama, where it's about Bama. Obviously, Bama and Saban tied together, but, the school Bama, that Roll Tide, it means something, right? And that culture means something. And, hopefully the momentum of that would carry on. Versus, so it's either that or, CU does good enough, long enough, where, the infrastructure and that momentum carries, where even if Prime's here say he's here for like 5 years, we win one Pac-12 championship, we're in 2 of them, or we're in 3 of them, and we built and maybe make a college football playoff appearance, I think that, a lot of those recruits want to be a part of that, at least within Colorado, that buzz, okay? And they want to be they want to put the CU in culture, if that makes sense. And, there has to be success for it to become CU's brand, as opposed to right now where it's all Dion's brand here in the offseason. And probably even for like a year or two, there has to be like a sustained success for, I think, that to transfer into Colorado football talk.
Okay. Well, I say that because, we talked about how important brand is in recruiting players and being a successful program, right? I am going to be honest. I am definitely worried that if Prime leaves, there goes the culture. That's it. There goes the culture. Prime is a powerhouse. CU is not, type of deal. Now, obviously, younger kids, they do not care about that stuff, but you also have to win long enough, I would say, for them to really feel that way about CU, because I could guarantee you right now, there is no child in Colorado that's like, oh my God, CU is a powerhouse. There is not. You could thank the coaching staff from the last couple years for that. And even with Coach Prime, I mean, you just look at the media attention, it's on Coach Prime, let's be honest, and what he's brought here, and that's going to be a big deal, and so when he leaves, I don't think anybody's going to be surprised when CU struggles to win 3 games again. I think more people would be surprised if they won 8 to 10 games after Coach Prime leaves. Even then, they'd be like, it was his roster that he recruited there, but with the transfer portal and stuff, that stuff changes real quick. So I would still say, it'd be a surprise. So I'm just putting that out there. What do y'all think about that before we move on to CSU here?
I mean, long story short, I agree with that. Yeah, there has to be some serious winning for that to become the culture. But if that winning does happen, I see, even if he stays, like, if we have that winning culture, I can see that kind of carrying CU for a long, long time.
Things have to happen on the field. I think it's that brief. So I like it.
Fair enough. All right. Well, then let's move on. Let's talk about CSU here. They've had arguably a little bit of a tougher time than CU, but they have sent players to the pros and all that stuff, and so they're just kind of mid, I would say, right now. They haven't been as big a dumpster fire, at least in my opinion, as CU, because at least you still got NFL players going out and just reaching a little bit higher levels of success than CU players, in my opinion. I'm just thinking of Michael Gallup and guys like that right now, to be honest with you. And so with that being said here, Gideon, I want to ask you, since you are a Ram currently, what do you think about the history of CSU's recruitment and all of that stuff here? Let's go last 10 years. I think that's the fair thing to do right now.
Okay. Well, I know you just said last 10 years, but the list that I keep referring to with the 24/7 rankings of the top 50, only one of those has gone to CSU, and that was Justin Holland in 2001. And so when we're looking at it, like, yes, CSU has been better with recruiting Colorado talent than CU has been in the past decade. At least that's how it feels. But it's not like CSU as a brand is a lot more basketball. And when you're looking at athletics, a team that's made the tournament, the NCAA tournament, twice in the past decade, I dare say that's not a great sign for the football program. Now, on campus, there is a lot of good buzz about what Jay Norvell has been doing. And here's another thing, is that there are opportunities opening up at CSU, because, like, Avery Morrow, who was the starting running back last season, he's been charged with felony second-degree assault, and so that's opening up a spot at running back. But yeah, when it comes to CSU's success, it says a lot that that one of our most successful NFL players is a punter who should have been All-Pro this year, but that's beside the point.
All right, okay. No, definitely fair. So they're not a football school. I think that's fair to say right away. So definitely, just keep in mind that. But Cody, what about you? What do you think about CSU and where they're at, how their recruitment has been in recent history, I guess?
Well, I think something that's important to consider when looking at CSU's football program is that they're not Power 5, right? So taking that into consideration when contrasting it with CU, obviously, if you're in a Power 5 conference, the expectations are higher, all right? Now, does that kind of make it a little bit more difficult for CSU where the expectations aren't always the highest? Yeah, I would say it does. But, I think that with the hand that they've been given, they sneak in some guys here and there. But, I mean, this season, I think that getting Tanner Morley has been huge. But, they've had a rough go, if we're talking the past 10 years, as far as just stability has gone. And so that has hurt their recruiting. I think that obviously when you look back at stuff that people, obviously, Sonny Lubick, I might be butchering his name there, low-key. But
you got it right.
He was historic, and his presence at CSU was huge. He's the second winningest coach as far as number of wins, you know what I mean? And, that was a sustained, long, solid success where he had a win percentage of almost 60%, right?
He was only in his last season, there were 2 games that were decided by a possession or less. And if he had won 2 of those games, then he'd be eligible for the Hall.
Yeah, so obviously that's a big deal, right? And taking note of that and understanding that there was sustained success. But then you look at the Steve Adazio hire. No, exactly. What was that? And so, I think that they just really struggled in the time since that to end up with a Sonny Lubick. You know what I mean? And I mean, you look at these last few, I wouldn't even say that these are bad hires. You know what I mean? Jim McElwain started off kind of hot, and I don't know if that was the last time CSU beat CU, but I mean it's the last time that I remember just a really classic game between those two. And then Bobo was a little bit of a mixed bag, I would say. So it's just hard when you don't have that sustained success, and that's what you have to do when you're not in Power 5. You have to find that one guy, and you have to hold on for dear life, really. And they just really haven't found that stability since the end of the Lubick era, in my opinion. And once they find a guy like that, they will get back to being successful and, to finding their footing as far as recruiting goes, both in and out of state.
Yeah, 100%. I will just say this: best recruiting class in the Mountain West this year. So, I feel like we're starting to get that consistency back. And then there are, when it comes to Colorado recruiting, the Morgan Trebet pickup shows me that at least they're willing to spend some money on gas. which is a lot better than some schools are.
Yes, it's not the farthest drive, but you do still got to get out there, though. So I definitely understand that. Gonna throw this out there as of, I don't know if this is updated. I don't think it is. But on signing day, they were able to nab 7 players from Colorado. Silas Evans from G-Dub is one. Tanner Morley is the only one that made our top 5 list that CESU was able to get as well. And then Trebet, like you said, Gideon, Javion Smith-Combs from Cherry Creek, Luke Francis, running back from Broomfield, Josh Ayers from Lutheran, and Garrett Keeler from Broomfield were also a couple more players that they added on there. Very championship heavy, I would say. So, take that with what you will there. I mean, it is what it is. But, I do want to pose this here. CSU is in Fort Collins. Fort Collins in Colorado, I would say, is one of the major cities and definitely a spot where arguably some of the best linemen of all time have come from. Gideon, I want to ask you this question. If you could rate CSU's recruitment of Fort Collins on a scale of 1 to 10, where is it at?
Of Fort Collins in particular?
Yeah.
So, if we're looking at... they are really bad with this city.
Okay.
This year, the northern Colorado area outside of Morgan and Trebet, I would give them probably like a 3. Because,
okay,
if you have Noah Atherton in your backyard, it is a 25-minute drive. You got that boy in your backyard. Because Thomason, he wanted to go Power 5. And with the mission, that's a hard sell for a lot of coaches. Fine, fair enough. Noah Atherton's right in your backyard. He's one of the top 20 recruits that we have according to our rankings. You have Jordan Neesant, who was visiting UNLV, ended up committing to Adams State, but is a really, really good player. You've got Tyler Kubat. You've got Gage Ginther, who, again, a Power 5 guy, but I think that's a guy that they have the ability to snag if they put in more effort. If you're looking at Fort Collins area as a whole, they don't do great. Even Fort Collins High School, they didn't have a good record this year, but you've got Joe Van Meter, you've got Joel Lopez, who, I mean, we have a decent kicker, but we need a really good punter again, because we punt a lot. Long story short, we have talent in the Fort Collins area. It is a proper city. They're just nah. And it's not like they're small schools either. If there was a good player at Pooter Community Academy who's 1A, fine, fair enough. But all of these schools are 4A and 5A. Fort Collins, not Fort Collins, Fossil Ridge High School was ranked 10th in the state going into the playoffs. And, you don't give Trek Keyworth a look. Who is a big receiver. You don't give Kubat a look. You don't, it frustrates me. And sure, maybe Colton Pollack's going to go lacrosse, but you don't give him a look? You don't give Jordan Neeson I've said my piece there, but I like that it looks like they at least sent people to all the championship games, which is something I'll touch on later. But Rocky Mountain High School is maybe 5 minutes away if you're driving.
Yeah. And these are all drives Gideon has made himself this last season.
True.
So,
yeah.
Props to you.
I drove further. I drove to Prospect Ridge. We went to that game, Delta versus the Academy. I went to that Prospect Ridge versus Manitou game. Johnstown, which is where Roosevelt is, which has the all-time receiving touchdowns leader, Tucker Peterson, is shorter than it was to go to Prospect Ridge. It's easy to do. They did offer Tucker Peterson a preferred walk-on. like completely fair. But that's the radius of the less than 45 minutes drive when you're talking about Fort Collins. And so, yeah, it's frustrating to see.
For sure. Now, this is the last, really the last question I have about CSU here, and I think we have to bring it up. We definitely have to talk about this because I don't know when else we will, but, and this one is for Cody to start, and then Gideon, you could answer here after him. But, you know, CSU has beef with one of the best trainers in the entire state, in Matt McChesney, 6-0 Academy. I'm going to give you my opinion of this. How I see it, seeing what CSU has done to him and how they're kind of shutting him out and they don't want their athletes to train with him, all that great stuff. And that's coming straight from their lineman coach. From what I see, that feels disrespectful towards Colorado football as a state. You know, how I see it is that, oh, okay, so you don't care that much about some of the best Colorado football players in the state, and you obviously believe that you could find better players, you know, in Texas or California or wherever in Georgia and get the leftovers, and those leftovers in those states are that much better than Colorado talent. Because say what you want about Matt, I don't know him personally, but I have a tremendous amount of respect for him professionally and what he does for Colorado players, how good he is as a trainer, getting these boys right, you know, and getting them tough and with the right mindset and being smart football players. And so with all that being said, Cody, with CSU doing that, what does that say to you, and how do you think that is going to affect CSU moving forward?
Sound the alarms. You're never going to compete for one of his players, and his players are pretty consistently near the top of these recruiting boards. I mean, it blows my mind is what it really does, and I just think it's foolish and stupid. Look, Josh Bates is a 6-0 guy, and you know, you're never going to compete for a guy like that. Zach Henning, he's somebody that you're probably never going to compete for. And you just lose out Cola Crew. That's a prospect that you're never going to get by not just damaging this relationship, but shattering it. And so I'm looking at Jay Norvell here, and I'm thinking, look, if you want great linemen, and you're going to figure out if going this secondhand leftover route is the one for you, which if you want to be taken seriously, that couldn't be me, right? And, you know, just because you're not a Power 5 school does not mean that you have to roll over, is kind of where I'm at with that. And so Jay Norvell, if his line doesn't get it together and this assistant really did that, then, you know, that's going to be up to him to address that situation and fix it. Because, I mean, look, the fact that Tanner Morley is staying is so huge. He's such a talented lineman, but, you know, I think that you're missing out on opportunities for some of these other guys. You know, Russ Woodward is somebody that I think CSU would have loved to have and was very capable of having if they weren't just going to discount 6-0 guys. You know what I mean? I think that that's a huge one that, you know, maybe gets overlooked and that they fumble the bag on, if I'm being completely honest. That's a fumbling. This situation is very not good. And, you know, if that assistant can get a ton of linemen and make it work, that's great. But from a spending money perspective and from an offering perspective and, you know, from a time in versus time out perspective, it'd be really nice to just have a guy that, you know, while he is a CU alumni, he does like seeing Colorado football players succeed. And, you know, he enjoys being able to see these guys succeed as well on the college level and maybe not have to go super far out of his way for it. So, you know, CSU, it's a whiff is what it is. I think that's the big word I'm looking for. It's a whiff, and, you know, it's something that is just, it has me a little worried too. And, you know, just with kind of the demeanor that I've got, and I can respect it to a degree, right, is that Norvell wants to do it his way, right? He wants to oversee this. He wants to succeed in his own way. You know what I'm saying? And I can respect that, but if it doesn't work doing it your way, then there's going to be problems. And, CSU, they have a brand new stadium, right? They have to pay for it. And you're going to do that by winning games. And you're not going to, and to win games, you need prospects. And to get prospects, you need to have good relationships, da-da-da-da-da. You see how there's like a huge domino effect to this. I am so glad that you brought that up. Because, that was a really bad look. And I just remember, oh man, that has to be addressed.
And they doubled down on it too.
Yeah.
It wasn't just a one-time thing.
Yeah, no. So I think that you better win. That's what I think. You better win, and your players better, and those linemen especially. But, especially as 6-0 expands, they've produced, this was a very solid quarterback class for 6-0. And, these guys, they're coming in and they're learning quite a bit about the game, and they're growing mentally as well as just getting strong and just being beasts. I mean, you look at Cola Cruz's usage rate this past season for Broomfield, it was absurd how much of a hand he had in not just passing the ball, but running the ball in the net yards. And that comes with that grind at 6-0 to a degree. And he's only going to continue to get quarterbacks working with him, right? Because in just a few years of working with quarterbacks, we've seen guys like A.J. Jackson, who had D1 offers. Mind you, he went to Western, but he did have an offer to University of San Diego and stuff like that. And then, a Cola Cruz and a Joseph Capra, and you're only going to see these guys grow. He also did some work with Bryce Vaz as well, and, helped get him looks and offers as well. So I think that these are all things that, you have to consider that 6-0's presence in Colorado is only going to get bigger. And you just got here. You just got here to CSU. You haven't proven anything yet to have this kind of arrogance, I don't think. And I'm worried about it. I'm worried about it for CSU. And in turn, I'm worried about it for Colorado football.
Gideon, what are your thoughts being the CSU Ram, the only one in this call?
Poor Gideon having to follow up on you and I just grilling this decision.
I mean, you guys are right. Like, looking at it. Like, one player. Okay, thinking about this logically. You know what CSU struggled with the most this season? Their offensive line. You want to know what Coach McChesney helps with the most? Oh, it's like it's the offensive line or something. So you just pissed off. Am I allowed to say pissed off?
Yeah, it'll be fine.
Okay. You just pissed off the only private offensive line coach in the state of Colorado. Or at least the only one that anyone really, knows about. The only one that, consistently gets taken seriously. So, sure, you may not have had a shot at the top 10 guys in the state, right? But that loses you players like a Ryder Smith, who he's working with Coach McChesney. I see him posting about it on a story all the time. You're losing a really good player there who is getting offers from schools I saw he posted on his Twitter. He's touring a school in Virginia in a couple of days. As he said, you're losing a Russ Woodward. You're losing all of these good players because you decided and it's just, as you said, it makes no sense because you have I respect Coach Norvell because he decided to come into a really rocky situation after Adazio. But you have proven absolutely nothing. CSU was the worst team in the country last year. You do not have room to be picky. You just don't. You do not have the room to say, oh, well, we're not going to... Zip it. If that player who is just as good as one of the leftovers from Texas... If that player is in the slightest bit interested, you do not have room to go, oh, well, because I don't like this guy who this kid works out with, to get to the point where he's as good or better than one of the Texas leftovers, we're going to go with the Texas leftover. You do not have room to be picky at this point in time. Give it 10, 15 years, if you're here and you have a Sonny Lubick type career, then you can hold grudges. But you do not have any goddamn room to be picky. And everyone on CSU campus is like I work with student media. I was there for a couple of sports shows. Like, our scripts for the sports shows are written kind of to make fun of the football team because the football team was so bad. Like, we just poke fun at them the entire time, and then when we get to the volleyball team, then we're like, okay, on to a serious topic. Which, I mean, not that it isn't serious, but, like, that's the attitude on campus, is that, like, the football team isn't serious. Yeah, long story short, you do not have room to be picky for another 10 years.
Last in the
If it lasts that
country
long.
in sacks allowed.
Jesus Christ.
Last in the country behind outpacing Akron and Tulsa.
Akron.
Why did I say Akron? I know how to read, everybody.
Akon is what you think about?
Akon. I want a football.
Yeah.
Anyways, that's
And-
the CTE talking, but yeah, no.
Yeah.
And you're not going to get quarterbacks that way. Like, what are you doing?
Yeah, and it's like, of the games that we won last season, I was there for the Hawaii game. We almost blew that. Our defense won us all of the like 2 or 3 games we won last season. That was our defense. Our offense did, like, in that game we won against Nevada, the only offensive point generated was the kick at the end of regulation from, like, the 45-yard line. That was it. In the Wyoming game, yes, we had a couple of, like, our offense isn't good enough to be picky about where the players are coming from. If they're in the least bit interested, you shouldn't piss off that guy, basically.
I hate to interject here, but this just keeps getting worse the more that I look into it. They allowed an average of 5.2 sacks a game.
Jesus. No quarterback
In a
wants to
conference
play
with
there.
Hawaii and Wyoming.
Dude.
Yes. Boise State, you could throw them in there too, because you know they're gonna hammer you.
I should not. It's so disrespectful to be laughing, but are you kidding me? 5 sacks allowed a game?
For the
That's a
first
joke.
For the first 5 weeks of the season, we were the worst team in the country. And then when we got our second win, then it went to Boulder, because Boulder last season. But, like, it makes 0 sense to me. And all the people, I'm not going to name names, but all the people that I talk to about it, it makes no sense to them either.
Well, there you go there. You know, look, not in a position to burn bridges. Is there anything they could do to make this right? I don't think so. I'm going to be honest, because here's the thing. Matt is already a CU alum, so he already doesn't like you. He's doing this for the athletes. You know, he's doing this for his athletes specifically, you know. So for you to just act that way, you know, and look, I'm not defending Matt as a person. I don't know the dude like that, and I have heard my share of things, but professionally, you'd rather have those players that he's coaching up at a really high level play for you than, you know, pushing aside your defensive linemen and putting their faces in the ground.
Coach
'Cause these are all
McChesney gets
guys
results.
Yeah, he does get results. You know, he does. Because these are all guys that are recruitable. They're in your backyard. They're in Colorado. You don't have to fly anywhere. You could just drive there. You know, and Matt, I know he also hosts a couple scouts every now and then, and so he'll get all his best guys in Parker, you know, at the actual 6-0 Academy to help those guys out so they can look at multiple prospects. And, I mean, where else in the state are you going to have that? On a whim. You know, he'll do it on a whim, I'm sure, too. You know, if he really feels like that, they're going to offer one of his guys and it would really help them out. You know, and so, hey, that's on you. You got to be you got to be smarter than that if you're CSU. And you know what? You better hope that CU doesn't beat you by 50 at any point. in while you're there, because I would love to see McChesney eating a little ram, a little lamb here for that rivalry. I think I said that as well when it came to not Tanner Morley, someone else, not Tanner Morley. I think I said the opposite for Tanner Morley, but hey, you made your own bed. You can't blame anybody but yourself. Be a big boy about it. Grow up. That's not the right way to make a good impression on Colorado. And don't forget, because we're not going to forget that of course it was the last regime. It happens. But you definitely didn't honor the scholarships of a good number of players who are already committed to you last season. And one of them, in Bryce Johnson, went to South Dakota State, who he won a national championship with, who you got 50-pieced by last year. Now, it wasn't it wasn't last year. Was it the year before? I can't remember if it was the same coaching staff. But regardless, it still happened. So, and no one's forgetting that. That's your legacy. That's your brand in Colorado right now. So have fun with that. But let's get, is there anything else we want to mention before we move on? I do want to kind of speed this thing up. My bad. But I feel like it is important to talk about some of these bigger programs in depth here, since they do have the most resources.
Yeah. I'll say my final piece, and then I'll hand it over to you, Cody. But I'm not sure about, so I think that for this coming season, I'm not saying that it's a probability. I'm saying that there's a chance that CSU wins that game against Boulder, because I know this team has more chemistry heading into it, and chemistry, helps a lot. If CSU finds a way to win that game, then I think a lot will be forgiven. But with the whole aside from the McChesney catastrophe, really is what it is, CSU's in a decent place, but they just haven't shown that they have a full commitment to Fort Collins area, let alone the state as a whole right now.
Yeah, they definitely have to pump up their in-state recruiting. I mean, especially just looking at this past year, 2 of the top 25 guys went to CSU, which I want to say is, it's way down from 2021 and 2020, where CSU is getting 4 to 5 guys, as well as some guys that were getting a little overlooked by 247. But look, between Adazio doing his thing and, destroying trust within the state, and then Norvell not seemingly looking in state, especially at players that can make an impact. There's guys that are going to other Mountain West schools that can ball out, from Colorado, mind you. So I think that
Jones Thomas. Tell Wade, what was that?
So you gotta keep your head on a swivel here if you're CSU. Otherwise, you're gonna find yourself making your bed at the bottom of the Mountain West. So that's my take on CSU and CU.
Hey, is UNLV in the Mountain West? Am I tripping?
They are, yeah.
Okay, great. So they get to go up against Costanzo and those boys as well. Matt Green too, so that's even better. But yeah, Mountain West, it's group of 5, but it's definitely some serious football, so there's that. And you also still got to build your fan base, so there's that as well, outside of alum, I would say. Now, moving on to, I guess, a more interesting program here in Air Force. They are D1. They have been hit with sanctions. Let's start with the sanctions first, because I think recruitment-wise, they've done a pretty solid job getting guys from around Colorado, specifically Southern Colorado as well. I know they always offer a lot of SoCo guys pretty early on, I would say, and so I'm going to give them their credit there. But I think things are definitely going to be changing here because of sanctions, and so let's talk about that, Cody. actually, no, sorry. Let's start with Gideon on this one since he's from Manitou Springs. Since he's actually from SoCo here. Let's start with Gideon. Gideon, so how do you think these sanctions are going to affect Air Force? Do you think that might even boost potentially recruiting in Colorado because they're closer to home and it might be easier to do as well, and they do have a good reputation? Or is that something that might hurt them?
Honestly, I don't think that the sanctions will... I mean, obviously it'll affect them, but when it comes to the perception of Air Force from people in Colorado, I don't think people are going to care. Because, like, thinking about it from the Springs, Air Force, statistically, only 2% of the country is willing and able to serve in the military to begin with. And so that's a pretty narrow market. And I'm not sure that anybody who would be interested in going to Air Force is going to care about that. Because Air Force has, I mean, it is a military school, and so like things with them having to tear down the church because they used bad materials, like, yeah, that'll affect their reputation. But if you want to go to a military school, if you're in Colorado, that is the best option. And so, yeah, just thinking about it personally, and from everyone that I know and everything that I have heard, Air Force's reputation is not really going to be affected by that, at least when it comes to the Springs area.
Yeah, no, fair enough. I would even say, and Cody, I'll throw it to you for this one and my last question, but I would even say Air Force's brand here in Colorado is stronger than CU's and CSU. Like, they have a stronger hold on Southern Colorado and Colorado in general. Cody, what would you have to say about that? And do you think sanctions will affect Air Force recruitment in state, for better or worse?
Well, I remember looking at some of the players that they've been getting these past few years and being really surprised. So I think that the sanctions might impact that a little bit. 'Cause it's just like, they're going to Air Force? Okay. And something that I think, if you're not in Southern Colorado, and something to consider is, like, you know, if you're Air Force and you're trying to sell someone on football, you also have to sell them on Air Force too. And that's a very serious commitment. And I look at a recruit like Jackson Adams very specifically, who was, you know, one of our top 5 edge rushers last year and was just an absolute monster off that edge. And, you know, granted, he had like maybe a couple injury question marks and whatnot, but regardless, just like what you're looking for really in a next level player. And when Air Force got him, I was very, very surprised. And so I think that sanctions might impact getting players like a Jackson Adams, but I think brand wise they have been strong, because I actually went to school. There's this guy who is a year below me, Blake Corrett. He was a D1 lineman. He worked with McChesney, and he had some looks coming up, and he played on my middle school football team. He was one of those kids who played up, and I remember him liking CU, and he eventually committed to Air Force, but I don't remember him being a huge military guy. Now, I could have misinterpreted it, through our years playing together, but I think that Air Force just did a great job of making him feel welcome, giving him a home purpose, and selling the football aspect of the game. I want to say he was a class of 2018 guy. And so with that pretty recent memory in mind, I do think that, Air Force does a good job. And I think that part of it is that they do win football games. You might not love it, how they do it and what they need to do. But I think that, you're getting a solid level of football out of Air Force. And, as somebody in Colorado, if you want to play for a winning football team in Colorado, Air Force has really provided the best opportunity to do that very recently. So, I think that has something to do. And, I think that I've been more proud of Air Force football recently than I have been of some other programs in the state. That's kind of my 2 cents on it. But, it definitely is weird and different to look at, kind of like Gideon said, because, it is military based. So that's something to consider. But I also maybe wonder, and it's a very hard school to get into as well, GPA wise. Like, you have to be a smart cookie to get in there too. So between that and maybe some sanctions, maybe a possible combination of those, just makes it a little bit tougher on AF.
Yeah, no, for sure. All right, well, there you go there. And I do live in the Springs as well, and so I could talk a little bit about Air Force too. I am always going to remember this because it was so cool. I've never seen this before. But I was down at Memorial Park. I work for the city. I help run some of the youth leagues down there. And it was probably the first clear day in the fall on a Saturday in a while. And I remember it was like maybe, I want to say 20 minutes before kickoff. You just hear and you see like a little squadron of jets just flying around the city. And they're doing that because they're about to fly over that Air Force game and whatnot, right? It's at a specific part in the anthem, and so they're timing it by, doing the routes or, flying around the city of Colorado Springs. And so it was the coolest thing. Like, the inner child in me was just, like, shocked, kind of just seeing these jets fly around. And I hit up my coworker. I was like, yo, you see this? What's going on? Because I was a little freaked out at first. I'm not even going to lie. And he was all like, oh, man, they do that for every Air Force home game. And I'm like, what? And he's like, oh, yeah, they do the route around here down by Memorial Park up to the, all the way up to the base, obviously. And they just keep flying around until it's time to do their little flyover. They do that for every home game. And to me, that was like the coolest thing. And then to see also all the kids around me who are getting ready for football games or playing in football games, like, it says more about me, I feel like. But kind of being on my level of excitement was kind of crazy. I'm not even going to lie. I'm not even going to lie. And everyone I've talked to who has also went to Air Force games talks about, how it's like a good stadium, like easy to stand up around and whatnot and see. Every view is a good view, basically, type of deal. And that's partially, credit to how their stadium is built and how great that is. And you know what? Winning football is fun football. It may not be the most fun, but it's real fun when you're smacking another dude in the face and winning by 50 every game because you're like that. You know what I'm saying? So that's just, it's kind of weird. I'm not gonna lie, it's kind of weird. Their scheme is very military, but they definitely stand up well against the armies and navies who are on the same level, and they stand up even better against other D1s too. And on top of that, they are committed to Colorado, and so their brand is healthy, their recruitment is healthy right now. I don't think it's crazy to say, as far as having an organic brand and whatnot, that they have the strongest brand of any D1 school as far as football goes in Colorado. Cody, Gideon, is that fair to say before we move on here?
Well, first off, that they're the only Colorado Division I football program with a winning record in bowl games. I'm just going to put that out there. Only one with a winning record in bowl games, including Calhoun's tenure here, where I think he's 7-5 or 7-4, something like that. So that's something to consider. All-time record, they're only one of two D1 schools with above 50% in all-time winning. And, we want to talk branding. I mean, the blue and white with that lightning bolt on the side is iconic, dude. Like, I think that it looks sweet. And, as somebody who, I mean, look, they perform well, so that's going to help with the brand. And, they've been around for a minute, and, I think that's a good point, too, is, like, just some of the things that are unique to Air Force that you can sell them on, and what makes it being awesome. And, I also just want to point out, like, they do fare well against other D1 competition. I think that's a great point. And so you think of, when you think of Mountain West football teams in Colorado, I mean, just because I grew up here, I kind of think of CSU, but Air Force is the more successful one as of late in the Mountain West. So that's kind of my chip in there.
Gideon?
Yeah, so, I mean, for me, Air Force, I was never interested in the military, so I was never interested in going to Air Force, but all of my friends that were interested, like, the brand is just unanimous. It, like, in a way where it's like not unanimous, ubiquitous, where you have, like, you see in the springs more people wearing Air Force merchandise. Now, a part of that is because it's a military city, but their brand is so much stronger in the past 20 years than CU and CSU, and I mean, it feels kind of mean to say UNC, but it's true, where it's like Air Force is attracting the top kicker in the state for a reason. Like, Bryce Olson is going there for a reason. Like, all the people that are interested in the military, like Grady Forsyth, they have a way better pitch to draw these players away from other Colorado schools. Like, so, yeah, they're doing for military schools what BYU does for religious schools, if that makes sense.
Ooh, I like that. That's a good comparison. Because I definitely would agree. And then, football's not going to last forever. So if you think about the value of having an Air Force Academy education compared to a Colorado or CSU or UNC education, it's not really a competition. I think Air Force really sets you up in a good spot because you're basically guaranteed a career after football for sure. With opportunities to move up as well. You're not just a grunt for the rest of your life, which I think is really important to keep in mind because you have players who are out there who are like, well, I know I'm not NFL good, but I'm at least college good, and I need to start thinking about life after football. And I think that's definitely something that the Air Force provides, and it's a huge part of Colorado football, and they do a really good job recruiting Colorado high schoolers and whatnot as well. So, I mean, there you go. But yeah, I think we don't really have to talk about Air Force too much. I am just going to say this, if you are a recruit out there and, you are thinking maybe a little bit more into the future, I would definitely give Air Force a solid consideration if I'm a football player because, look, football's not going to last for life. There's no guarantees that you go pro or anything like that. But what you can do is go to a winning program, be, in a really good spot to have a good career afterwards. Is that fair, Cody and Gideon? Before we move on here to our last D1.
100%. Yeah, long story short, that's all I got to say. It sets you up for a way better chance at a long-term career than some of the other schools do. Oh, no, you're good. Yeah, like, it depends on what you think about the military, but if that's your vibe, like, they give you better than Army being independent, that's for sure. And I mean, I'm not even really sure when the last time the Navy was relevant well, not the Navy, but Navy was relevant outside of David Robinson, and that's basketball. So, yeah, of the military schools, they'll do it.
Air Force got to be listening to us talk about Colorado recruiting and be like, put some respect on my name. Or just talking about D1 success in Colorado, put some respect on my name. And I think that we've done a good job of putting some respect on my name.
No, for sure. Also, last comment. I know the Top Gun movies have definitely helped with Air Force recruitment, not just for football, but in general. And no one's making movies about Rams or Buffaloes, so let's go ahead and go.
But there are movies about bears.
D1 here, because they are making movies about bears. That's true. It's true. All right. Here. I'll kind of summarize the history, and we'll just get into the current things because I think that's a little bit more exciting. History of the University of Northern Colorado. We won a national championship as a D2. And then we won D1, and we have not won our conference. We have not made playoffs. I think we might have gone over 500 or got to 500 one time. Cody, feel free to...
It's not good.
And it's tough. Part of it is definitely coaching. But, obviously we thought Ed McCaffrey, coaching at Valor Christian would get it done. he did not really go after Colorado recruits the way this coaching staff was doing it. I feel like he was a little bit more passive than throwing all the drama with him, his son, all that stuff. It just wasn't going to work out, and his mismanagement of games. It just wasn't going to work out. But it is a new era in UNC football under head coach Ed Lamb. This is a guy that has won in the FCS, winning with Southern Utah, which is or was part of the Big Sky at that point, and winning the Big Sky a couple of times. And I'm just going to put this out there as well. The Big Sky is, in my opinion, the best FCS conference total out there. It's not just a conference with one good team like NDSU or SDSU. They got multiple, hard hitter contenders out there between Montana State, Montana, Eastern Washington, just to name a few there. Sac State is thrown in the mix. Go ahead.
I was about to ask their Big Sky, right? But then you said it.
Yes. They are definitely in that mix. It's a tough conference. It's not an easy one to get to 500, and I'm going to be honest. Idaho as well, I think, even made the playoffs, I'm pretty sure. So there's that. It's tough, it's tough if you're UNC. But, there is the potential to really be able to recruit Colorado well with the talent in this state and with the draw that is the Big Sky, because you're going to be able to play top-tier talent in the Big Sky, especially with guys like Cooper Kupp who are going crazy in the NFL. People are definitely looking at all levels and being like, okay, realistically, if I'm a baller, I could go to UNC and do the same thing Cooper Kupp did and then go pro. That's a path that is viable to me because there is an FCS school in UNC here in Colorado. And so, Cody, I want to ask you about UNC here. And, they've had a tough go the last couple years, but how bright is this future under head coach Ed Lamb and all that great stuff?
As an alumni, it is my job to be excited and, be optimistic. As someone with PTSD from this program, I just kind of want to wait before I get too excited. I think that obviously, the Ed McCaffrey experience was a very hard one for UNC fans and alumni alike. So I think that I just want Ed Lamb to bury those memories very, very far away. So that way in 10 years, after we have, hopefully like another winning season or at least a season where we look respectable, we could be like, remember that time that Ed McCaffrey was our coach? What the heck was that all about? And, we can laugh about it because we're not still miserable. That's kind of like where I'm at. I'm just, the entire time we were in school, it was just not great. So, I think there's a lot to be excited about. Obviously, you have a guy who's established, who succeeded, not only on the FCS level, but in that setting. He's familiar with the teams there. He's familiar with the recruiting there. And, we have received confirmation on his emphasis on Colorado talent. And I think that, if that's how the rest of the Big Sky kind of rolls as far as sticking to, their state. And I mean, most places would like to stick to their state, obviously. But if we could start keeping the guys that would go to some of those other Big Sky schools in state, that would be massive. I think of like a few recruits that went to Eastern Washington over these past few years, and being able to keep those guys on our team would be great. I think of, UNC guys that have genuinely been D1 guys who have just kind of collected dust and haven't really got the chance to really ball out. And I think that those guys aren't going to be underutilized anymore. I think that, there's competency, which will go a long way. And, there's drive to succeed. And that gets me very excited, skeptically excited. But, I think that this could spell wonders for UNC and, mean a lot heading forward.
For sure. And Gideon, before you reply, I do want to say this. So at least according to what we have down here, I know numbers might be a little bit different as players are still committing and choosing where to walk on and all that stuff. But according to what I have here, UNC has 14 Colorado recruits signed in this class of 23. And this is a new coaching staff, mind you, that just got here in December too, just like Coach Prime. That's either more or the same as all the other D1s in Colorado combined here. And so with that being said, Gideon, what do you think about that, and how bright is this future for Northern Colorado football and for the high schoolers who might be looking into potentially playing for Northern Colorado?
I think that Northern Colorado has almost the opposite reputation when it comes to, like, when you're looking at CSU in Northern Colorado, they occupy a similar market in space in people's minds, like when it comes to recent year success. When it comes to long-term success, Northern Colorado can only go up. So when you're looking at it, yeah, like you mentioned, they won that D2 national championship. That's really, really cool. So has CSU Pueblo. However, CSU Pueblo isn't D1. When they made that move to D1, as he said, they haven't been too successful. CSU had those years of success where they were at least decent, and then they fell off. Northern Colorado can only get better. And so, by showing this commitment, by getting Caden Box, by getting Braylon Warren, by getting Brody Bleak, like, they're not just going with the state champions here. Like, they got Kamari Owens from Overland. They got Braden Monroe from Chaparral. Like, sorry if I'm mispronouncing this, but Makur Abram from Thomas Jefferson. Brady Witherspoon, Arvada West. Like, they got a kid, Caleb Kwame from Brighton. If I'm looking at this correctly, I think Brighton's 1A, if I'm remembering correctly. Like, they...
No. Brighton's like 4A or 3A in football.
Oh,
in football.
Oh,
it's different for.
I'm thinking a different school.
Yeah, you're good.
I was thinking a different school. Sorry, everybody, but I've been putting together logos for the past week. I've gone stir crazy, but
you're good.
But like, they got Dom Butts out of Severance, so it's obvious that this is a coaching staff that is serious, and they're not just saying it when they say that they are looking at Colorado talent. They're taking it seriously. They're looking for, like, less successful programs. Because you look at the other 3 D1s. Hank Zelinskas is from Cherry Creek. The only player that... Actually, no. All the players that were recruited from these other schools were top 10 teams in their division. Right? Green Mountain was undefeated, and they got Donnie Carney that's going to Air Force. You got Valor, Grandview, Fossil, Broomfield, Lutheran, Creek, Eaton, and George Washington. Northern Colorado is showing that they don't care what the record of your school is. They just care that you're a good player. And, like, yeah, their brand isn't as strong. Like, as an FCS school, it's not going to be as strong, but you can only move up, and by showing that commitment to talent, like, they have more Colorado players on there that they recruited than Mesa and Adams State, and actually Fort Lewis as well. And so, yeah, long story short, they're showing that they are the top Colorado D1 recruiter, and they're getting that respect as such.
Yeah, absolutely. And talking about, them recruiting Colorado, I mean, here's the thing that really helps Colorado high school football and Colorado recruits, period. When a school recruits Colorado heavy, obviously that school is going to go ahead and reflect, like, oh, okay, these guys, they're repping Colorado. But when they start winning, and when they start breaking records, and when they start putting up numbers and highlights and all this stuff, and start drawing a little bit of a crowd, and then you see, oh shoot, that's CCO from Lutheran. That's KJ from Palmer Ridge. That's Caden from Skyline. Those are guys in my neighborhood that are turning up in Greeley and finding a way to go get it done. That's big time. Not only for Colorado, but looking at a state as well, at how Colorado is viewed as a football state. It is healthy for these guys to go to a D1 and find those opportunities and then be successful, right? Go find success, because that only reflects great on Colorado talent. The more these kids win, the more that Northern Colorado wins, the more recruiting that Colorado as a whole will get, because people are going to see, okay, they're on the national platform, they're doing well, they're playing in the toughest FCS conference, they're showing that they could knock it with the big boys, that is big time. And so that means other college recruiters are going to be like, yo, we got to do something about that Greeley team over there. We got to start taking away from their pipeline. And so it's going to become an all-out war trying to find some of these recruits and trying to take them from UNC and CU and CSU and trying to find sleepers that have built this program and found a way to get it done. Now, obviously, that all hinges on them finding success. It's probably not going to be right away like Coach Prime, but this is a process. And so the more successful a team that is heavily recruited, that does heavily recruit Colorado is, the better that reflects on all Colorado high school football for us and for all these great athletes in this state. Is that fair to say, Gideon or Cody?
I think something that's interesting with UNC is that they have the most room to grow Colorado football in the recruiting aspect because they are so unproven and still, I mean, I'm not making an excuse, like they should have been more successful by now, but still a younger program in the grand scheme of things. And so, I don't think that, like on a national level, I don't think that UNC's reputation is really felt yet. It's still like either unknown or scoffed at. And so a few successful seasons in a row, like you said, where they see UNC doing it and then trying to cut into that. I think that's a great point. I think that like expectation versus growth is going to play a huge role in that, where it's like, you will be more blown away by a school suddenly appearing on your radar, even though they've always existed. It's like, oh, wow, what do you mean UNC has gone, 6-4, has posted a 50% or above winning record for 7 seasons in a row, right? That's going to mean more to you than a CSU doing that, going 6-4 for a sustained a long time and just kind of getting by. Because, they have had that success before. For CU, they have had that success before. Or even Air Force having that sustained success for such a long time. There's going to be room for that impact to really be felt. And I think that that's very important and huge.
Yeah, 100% there. And then my last thing on this topic, and then I'll have said everything I have to say, but Northern Colorado has 4 guys that were on our top 5 list, which is the most of any Colorado school. And so I say we give it 2 years, maybe 3, and they're just going to burst onto the national stage as a school to, at the very least, look out for and be worried about. And so that's going to be something that's going to be a sight to see.
Absolutely. Really, it's a lot of good for Colorado high school football, because at least these kids are getting an opportunity to go play. And I hope it doesn't end here. I pretty much expect them to go ahead and get more Colorado talent out of these 24s, looking to get more guys and once again beat the other D1s in recruits, because they really want to build on Colorado talent. They know that there's talent here. They trust their coaching skills and ability to develop that and create a consistent juggernaut eventually, or at least a consistently all right to find team, and so we'll definitely have to see, but the future is bright for Colorado football and Colorado high school football. Now, moving on to the next topic here, I don't want to talk about every school individually. This could be more of a as a whole thing, but let's talk D2 programs here in Colorado. There's a couple here. You got CSU Pueblo. You got Colorado School of Mines, who just went to the D2 National Championship. You have Western, you have Mesa, you have Adams State, and you have Fort Lewis. That's all of them, right? I'm not missing any. Yep. So there you go there. I think it is fair to say that the best D2s in Colorado have recruited top-tier Colorado talent the best, right? I think there's definitely a correlation there. Agree or not agree, Cody or Gideon?
I mean, look, I think that when we're talking D2 here in Colorado, I think that obviously they get the majority of prospects in Colorado. And, I think that there's plenty of success to be happy about for basically all these programs over the past, decade. And that's not even talking historically where, teams like Mines and CSU Pueblo have a ton of RMAC titles, and even some of these programs that maybe struggle a little bit, they still put up good fights and they still get solid talent. And, I think that there's a pretty rich D2 history as well, if you want to talk branding and, the impact that's had on the football community. And, for Colorado kids, it does kind of mean something to play football here on the D2 level for a handful of these schools. And, I think that the opportunities are just very interesting as far as, what they can accomplish and everything in those lines. So, I think that this is very important for Colorado football. If we did not have a D2 scene, we would be in deep trouble, all right? But, you look at recent success, Mines obviously in that national D2 championship. CSU Pueblo captured one a handful of years ago. Western has stepped up their game over the past few years, winning an RMAC for the first time in a while. And I think that all of that has been very critical to not only the culture surrounding Colorado football, but, I think just for a lot of these athletes, it's provided a lot of great opportunities where, they do get overlooked, but they still have a chance to play successful winning football. And, I'm looking at even Mesa, which is one of the D2s that we talk about significantly less, but they've had multiple 9-win seasons since 2015. You know what I mean? So they've posted up plenty of wins. They've found the success. And, I think that can be found at basically every single D2 school to some degree. Now, are some better than others? Obviously. But the success and the attention to Colorado, and I feel like that just spells, that there is a disconnect with a lot of other places, that we have so many successful D2 programs that are recruiting in state, and that we can hold up and go toe-to-toe with D2s from across the country and make up, a decent chunk of any D2 playoff bracket that, maybe some players are being overlooked.
Yeah, 100%. And when we're looking at it, obviously, School of Mines is going to be better than Fort Lewis in the majority of given years. And yeah, I'm looking at this list of Colorado athletes that have committed. And looking at Mesa, it's almost comical because there are 34 that committed to go to Mesa this year. 34.
They had a great class. They had a great recruiting class this year for sure.
Yeah, the names that stand out to me the most, of course, are Trek Keyworth. You've got just looking at this list, Cash Walker, you've got him on that list. Ben Wigglesworth out of Denver East, Max Kibbe out of Grandview, Nicky McGuire, who's a really quality player I got to see live. You've got who was that? I saw Parker Steckel out of Northridge. So Cade Street out of Rifle, he won a couple of playoff games this year. You're seeing what these D2s are doing, and they are just able to maintain their reputations really well. So, CSUP, now most of these are, these are really good schools for the western slope, for the western part of Colorado. Because, like, obviously Western Mesa and Fort Lewis are on the west. They're going to have a lot better access to those schools. But then you also have, like, CSUP, who, I mean, I'll admit, I don't like the city of Pueblo, but they have a really, really strong presence as a brand in Southern Colorado. Like, CSUP, as a D2 school, has a better presence in Southern Colorado. And Simon, I'd like to know what you think about this statement. But, like, they have, in my mind, they have a better presence in SoCo than both CSU and Northern Colorado.
Yeah, no, definitely agreed. I think part of that could definitely be attributed to the number of former CSU Pueblo players or coaches that coach and stay in Southern Colorado. The biggest one that comes to mind is Coach Novotny out of Fountain Fort Carson. He used to be a CSUP guy. So that's definitely big time. And you throw in the fact that they consistently recruit Colorado well. I mean, there's a built fan base for CSU Pueblo here in Colorado, period. Not just Southern Colorado. There's a very much a built fan base and culture there. And it's much more stable because they win. Even their down years aren't as horrible as CU and CSU's down years than CSU Pueblo. You know, they do a good job winning, and they do it with Colorado talent. And, you know, we talked about how good it was for these kids to get opportunities to play for Northern Colorado because they get to showcase how good Colorado high school football is. That's what all these D2s have been doing for years now. In that Colorado School of Mines final playoff game, I remember it's Tyson Bajent. It was his team, who he's now an NFL prospect right now. They were playing Mines in Golden, and this kid was getting sacked and smacked around and not allowed to run anywhere by all Colorado guys. I was like, oh, there's a Palmer Ridge kid. There's a Valor kid. It was crazy. How many? Oh, there's a Broomfield kid, Hall Edmonds. He just hammered this dude. It was crazy how many Colorado guys were just attacking this NFL prospect and holding him to the worst performance of his career. Not just this season, but of his career, basically, on the highest level, and sending them to the national championship in Texas. And obviously they didn't win. They're a little bit green with the green head coach as well, Mines that is, but that shows how talented this state is and how important it is for these kids to get opportunities to go play. So yeah, I definitely agree that the brand of CSU Pueblo is very strong, stronger than CU and CSU, and I would say even the Colorado School of Mines brand is definitely growing and is up there for sure. Is that fair to say?
Oh, 100%. Because in my mind, like, Pueblo, it's a working class city, and CSU Pueblo has adapted that mindset. It's the school where people go if they should have gone D1. Or Mines, it has developed the identity of, we're gonna outwork you both on the field and in the film room, like that phrase I saw when they were on their championship run of, our players are going to be your players' bosses in 20 years. So it's like those schools have a fortified identity that people in Colorado, the players, everyone knows CSUP is hardworking and they're the underdogs, and Mines is going to outwork you in the classroom, on the field. It doesn't matter. They're going to do it. And Western with the, let's just say it's only a matter of time until they find the next Eckler. Like, that is an insane... It's kind of crazy to me that Eckler got missed by the 4D1s and ended up going to Western. But then, yeah, like, Western, Mesa, and Adams State are all, like, building that identity and continuing to push, like, we are the Western Slope. You can't mess with us. You're going to be coming here, and it's going to be hostile. So, yeah, they're all building that identity and becoming bigger forces in Colorado. All I'll say is that it sucks that UCCS doesn't have a team, because they have a field. CSCS plays on it, and it's a nice field. they need a team.
It is. Yeah. A great view, too. You could get some great media shots out there. But, they're a soccer school. So, but Cody, what do you think about what we just had to say there?
First off, don't think no one didn't catch you laughing at that little soccer school comment that you made. But anyways, no, I definitely think that obviously there's opportunity to potentially expand in the D2 realm. But, I mean, it is important to note the success, like I said, and note where the success is coming from. And, it's only a matter of time before, unsuccessful D1 programs are looking at some of the successful players at these D2 programs, and those opportunities to climb are provided, and I think that there's, especially with the transfer portal, that opportunity is only going to grow as it's utilized more and more. And if you could keep those transfers within state, that's fantastic.
Absolutely. Now, I'm just going to say this last thing, and then we could move on to our last topic, which won't be super long, and I appreciate you boys.
I'm very
and
excited
the
about this last
for hanging
topic,
in
though.
with us. But I do have one thing to say here. Would y'all say, Cody, you first here, would you say that D2 football in Colorado and all of that success, would you say that is vital to Colorado high school football and recruitment in this state?
I'll take a jab at it first. On a big scale,
just a Colorado.
On a Colorado scale, it's monumental. On a Colorado scale, I cannot overstate the importance of the D2 success here. I cannot overstate the passion that D2s have for Colorado kids. And the fact that they're able to win with them, I think is huge. And I think that that's one of the biggest reasons why there's something of a culture and a passion for football here in Colorado, is knowing how these D2 schools do. And, some of these guys learn about it on their visits, but I think that the passion is very serious. I think that a lot of these guys don't scoff at the opportunity to play college ball, and, they get excited, honored, or privileged to be able to do that in their home state, whether it's on and they don't really mind as much that it's on the D2 level. And if they're going to be good and playing successful D2 football anywhere, why not be here in your home state? I think that's very, very, very important for the culture here of Colorado football. Very important. Arguably one of the most important things for Colorado football culture as of right now is the success, passion, and effort poured into D2 Colorado football.
Gideon?
Yeah, I really, really agree there, because, I'm thinking about it in terms of opportunities. Because without as strong of a D2 presence as we have here, where would our talented athletes be going? Because I think that without a Fort Lewis, we do not see Cape Olson going to a good situation. Now, you can debate you can debate about whether or not Fort Lewis is a good program, but that's a place where he's going to be able to get an opportunity for an education because he's earned it. Devin, I am sorry that I have never figured out how to pronounce your last name. Devin Furui? Is that how you say it?
I think it's Fury.
Furie? Okay, sorry, Devin, if you're listening, but, there are worlds where, Devin Furrier, Cooper Harrison, you got Aiden Lauer, there are worlds where, if these schools are not there, Cade Street out of Rifle is a great example where it's who in the world, if Mesa, Western, and Fort Lewis and Adams State are not there, where's that kid going to college? Is he going to be able to afford to go to college? I don't know his personal situation, but I know guys where if not for the opportunity to play in Colorado on the D2 level, they would be in manual labor which, not that there's anything wrong with that, but if they want to take that path through college, this gives them that opportunity. So having these D2s here is really, really important for that, at least in my mind.
Yeah, I would say it's the bedrock of recruitment here in the state almost. If there wasn't any D2s, like they all like disappeared, that would put a lot of athletes in peril as far as their immediate future goes. And it's also good that they're winning, and they're finding success. You got guys like Ryan Jensen, who's a Pro Bowler in the NFL from CSU Pueblo. You got guys like Austin Eckler, obviously Pro Bowler from Western. They have proven that you could go to a D2, get a solid education, put up numbers, and go to the league. And there's a path from there to the pros, even to some of these developmental leagues like the XFL or USFL as well, for sure. And they've committed to getting D2 guys. And so the more successful these D2s are, the better recruitment is. I think that is a good baseline for Colorado high school football recruitment in general. That's just a good baseline, having good D2s and having a number to pick from as well. There are some states that don't have this many D2s, and for Colorado to have D2s, like you said, Gideon, kind of all around the state on both sides of the Rockies really here, that's pretty huge for everyone. And so there you go there. Now, with that being said, we talk about how D2 was the bedrock of Colorado high school football recruitment. We talk about the potential of UNC, how Air Force has built a brand and found success, how CSU and CU are, they're finding their way, maybe not helping Colorado high school football, but they're finding their way. Let's go ahead and talk about the last topic here, and about something that would definitely benefit Colorado high school football. And I want to ask y'all this. Gideon, let me start with you. But if one of the junior colleges in Colorado got a football program, how beneficial would that be for Colorado high school football players?
All right, so I actually have a list here of all the schools that currently have JUCO teams in one sport or another. You've got Northeastern, which is in Sterling. You got Trinidad State, Otero Junior College, Lamar Community College, and Colorado Northwestern Community College. And then I'll also throw Pikes Peak State College in there, considering that they recently got a boost in funding due to going from a community college to a state college.
Go Aardvarks, but go on.
So, looking at that collection of schools, now I'm from the Spring, so I'm biased, but I feel like having a JUCO in the Springs, or having, because Air Force is good, and Colorado Springs is a military city, but only 5% of the children of veterans go into the military themselves. Well, it's between 5 or 20. I'm forgetting exactly which, but it's not much. And so looking at it, there needs to be something there. There needs to be because that, you have a JUCO that is able to consistently showcase talent, is consistently, because it kind of goes without saying that a JUCO goes through talent quicker, because people are coming in, showing what they can do, getting their grades up, and getting out. And so you're able to provide more opportunity to more Colorado athletes that may otherwise not have a chance. Because let's say you got somebody who goes to Harrison, and they're a great football player, grades aren't particularly the best. Well, they go to Pikes Peak State College, and they play there for a little bit, for 2 years, transfer to a place like CU or CSU or anywhere in the country, then that boosts the Colorado brand and gives that opportunity to somebody who otherwise wouldn't be able to have it. And so I personally do not understand. I understand why, because transportation is expensive for that many people. But if these are schools that already have soccer teams, already have baseball teams, already have basketball teams, or in the case of Pikes Peak State College, are actively growing, or schools that, long story short, I do not see a good reason why in the next couple of years at least one of those schools shouldn't add a football program. Because that's not only beneficial for them, but it's beneficial for the state as a whole.
I would also shout out Ames Community College. I know they don't have any sports teams, but their new little center for their community college is 4 stories high, and they have 5 ballrooms. So if you're telling me that you could afford that monster, but you can't afford to, put in some locker rooms and bus drivers and coaches and all that stuff, I don't know what to tell you. But there's definitely opportunities there, and it would help a lot of kids. Cody, what do you think about that? And, how helpful do you think a JUCO football program in Colorado would be for these high school football players?
Well, I think that opportunities are important, right? And we see this with every single sport. We've seen this on every single level. The more opportunities that you have to play, the better it is for individuals, the better it is for the sport, and just the more angles that can be taken, right? So I think that obviously there's a lot of kids that want to play football here, and I'd rather see them play JUCO football here than D3 football in South Dakota. You know what I mean? I know a lot of kids that I've covered through requests and stuff that have gone D3 and, done their thing, but I'd rather them play JUCO ball and at least have a shot, or, not have to make kids, relocate entirely out of the state for those JUCO opportunities, which we've seen and heard some, and we've been consulted about some of those opportunities as well. And, I look at these schools with athletic programs, and, I really think that there's a huge opportunity to make the most of this. I'm looking at, I want to say this is Colorado Northwestern, and the programs they have basketball, men's, women's, they have softball, soccer, both men's and women's soccer, that is, and they have volleyball, right? So they have, especially if you see that they have soccer, it's maybe they could make use of that field in some way and grow that. Or I'm looking at just how many programs they have and imagining the possibilities. Lamar is another place where there are those opportunities. And, there's men's and women's soccer at Northeastern Junior College, and that's some place where I know people personally who've gone there to play baseball and stuff. So I think that, there's facilities at a handful of these places through soccer that you could kind of, if you're worried about that cost-wise, you can make the most of that, and there's a possibility there, right? So I think that there's definitely room for this growth. And I don't mean just in Colorado and in the facilities. There's also room in the NJCAA as well. I think that I look at a conference like the Iowa Community College Athletic Conference, and I'm like, hey, it's not a complete straight shot here, but maybe we could get Northeastern into this conference that literally only has 3 schools, or Northwestern into, this conference that only has 3 schools, get that up to 5. I look at, the Southwest Junior College Football Conference, and I'm like, oh my gosh, you look at where these are located between New Mexico Military, you look at where the Oklahoma schools are, and I could easily bunch the, Lamar Community College in there. I can bunch Trinidad in there and, just get excited about those opportunities and grow this conference as well. Or, obviously with the schools that have soccer fields, you could start a Colorado Community College Athletic Conference, for football specifically, and, get these teams invested and, get these 5 or 6 teams playing each other, right? And still getting a spotlight. And these JUCOs, keep in mind, JUCOs don't just recruit from the state that they're in, too. So it's just another opportunity for Colorado guys to go against national competition, which is always good, and compete for roster spots. And, I look at a school like Northwestern as well and just think, hey, we could probably get some Utah guys up in here as well. And, they're a state that has garnered some national attention as well with some of their recruits. And then I look at, Trinidad and think, hey, maybe we can get some guys competing against some AZ guys that is, now really growing into that reputation as a quote-unquote football state, or a state where football is very good, right? So I think that the opportunities are there to grow these programs, and I think that the opportunity of the benefits of these programs is very, very strong as well.
Yep, for sure. And if you're worried about transportation, Cody will personally drive the bus. So.
Let me drive the bus. Nah, dude, we're gonna get Blake Griffin as the pilot of NJCAA, and then he's gonna ball out for some JUCO until a D1 picks him up.
Yeah. And
go ahead, Gideon.
God, yeah, like that whole Blake Griffin situation links to a whole nother thing that I'm sure we'll talk about in another episode with not inputting stats. But regardless, and furthermore, when it comes to JUCOs, that also helps people that don't know as much about the recruiting world. So specifically when it comes to rural communities, like you see Griffin Owens, who was out in Woodland Park, only really started... like, Woodland Park isn't exactly a college pipeline. And so he didn't really know much about that. His parents were my neighbors when I was in Manitou, and we talked about it, and they're like, yeah, he's at a JUCO in, I want to say it was Minnesota or Michigan, and he was balling out, and coaches that he was talking to said that he was D2 level. And, injuries have played their part in that situation, but, guys like that who aren't as comfortable with the recruiting landscape don't have the option of getting these fancy coaches or being able to go to these camps. Those JUCOs provide a critical opportunity for those people from rural communities. So yeah, that's the last I gotta say about that.
Fair enough. Yeah, no, a JUCO program. What was that?
No, you've created a monster here. Now I just want to say, let me drive a bus over and over again.
Oh, I'm gonna edit that out. Anyways, fair enough. Look, a JUCO program would be huge. JUCO programs, obviously, having D2s and good D2s, that is basically the bedrock of Colorado high school football recruitment. But I think there's always going to be the question of, well, how affordable is it to go here on a half scholarship or whatever, or just walk on and play, right? I think that's always going to be a question. At least with JUCOs, hey, this is 2 years only, maybe 3 years max, and it's going to be cheap because it's a junior college, and I think financially that allows a lot of players to be like, okay, I could definitely join this team because it's in-state, close to home and all that, and I wouldn't have to worry too much about things, and that just puts a lot of things off the field to rest there. Now, from a, college standpoint here, if you're a CU, CSU, UNC, whatever, if you're a player trying to go to one of those schools, it will be like, okay, well, let me go play at this JUCO real quick. If you're a player bouncing back from one of those schools, okay, let me go to the JUCO in state since I'm already living here, type of deal. And so that definitely would be a big deal for Colorado high school football and Colorado football in general. I think that is definitely the next step to take forward, outside of the D1s getting better in general, as far as opportunities for high school football players and all that great stuff. So, but that pretty much wraps up this episode. Cody, do you have anything you want to say here before I wrap it up here?
Not that I can really think of overarching, other than, for Colorado guys, I'd say don't give up on Colorado programs. Don't be afraid to take a risk and be a part of the growth of them. But also, at the same time that I say that, know your worth, right? And just go with go with the school that makes you feel the most valued and comfortable, and continuing listening to our interview episodes where, people talk recruiting and stuff like that. So I think that's a big takeaway. Obviously, I think that the success of Colorado college football will reflect how states outside of Colorado view Colorado talent. So, I am pulling for these programs to pull it together if they're not together, and to keep it together as long as they are together. But, we do have to be better as a state on the D1 level for our players, and we owe that to our young football players here.
Gideon, any closing statements or remarks?
I mean, ultimately, when it comes to a state like Colorado, if there is talent, with the amount of talent that we have and the amount of schools that we have, people are unfortunately bound to get missed. That's the unfortunate reality of the situation. And some schools are not helping. Some schools are... CSU, the whole McChesney thing just really puts me off, personally. But then when we look at schools like Mesa, and when we look at schools like CSU Pueblo, they're real bright spots. And I guess my main takeaway is that, we have some really good schools in Colorado. Not just athletic schools, but we have DU. We have Colorado College. We have UCCS. We have really solid academic schools that, and in addition to all the community colleges, I think it would be good if we added one or two more college programs. Personally, because CC, I think they could probably sustain a D3. UCCS, they've already got the facilities. DU, they have a national championship hockey program. I think they'd probably be able to. Metropolitan State, they've got both men's and women's soccer teams. So these are schools that already have facilities. It just comes to being willing to take that next step and being willing to grow, because Colorado is one of the fastest growing states in the nation. We have people from California, from Texas, and from New York, from these hotbeds, coming here. And so it's only a matter of time before we start to get our names in these conversations with California, with Texas, with Georgia, with the South. And I said earlier that right now you want to go for the under the radar guys? Well, what those states have that makes them the radar is JUCO programs and a very healthy and expansive culture when it comes to D1s and good identifiable brands. And so, long story short, it's going to take a lot of things going right. But if we play our cards right in the next few years, I can see Colorado becoming one of those nationally recognized states that people talk about, and it's one of the first states that come to people's minds above Wisconsin.
I can't believe Gideon has personal beef with Wisconsin.
I don't have beef with them. I'm going off of what you said earlier.
That list, Simon, we literally looked at that list right before we was eating lunch with our homeboy who coaches college football, and we got all fired up before he sat down.
No, I'm just messing with you. Hey, you know what? Gideon for football governor of Colorado. I buy into that. That got me fired up. I ain't even gonna lie. That's pretty big time, and you're right. And you know what? I don't really have anything else to add. I think it's important for the colleges to do well. For a healthy football culture, you have to have success on all levels. Cherry Creek can't be your most iconic program in the state. I'm just going to be honest with you. Over your college program, that's insane. So just throwing all that out there, obviously wishing the best. Go Bears. I'm a Northern Colorado fan. fam, whatever. And you know what? That basically wraps up this episode. We got a lot of topics ahead of here. Just to, preview a little bit. We're going to talk about coaching, 5A football specifically, 7-on-7, racism in Colorado football. I almost forgot about that. Almost. And then we have higher classification bias. And then we're also going to talk about some girls' high school flag football, which should be really fun. And with that being said, go ahead and show some love on social media at Playmakers Corner, Facebook, Instagram, Twitter, and TikTok. You can find us there, assuming TikTok isn't banned when this episode releases, I should say. But in case it is, go ahead and subscribe to our YouTube channel at Playmakers Corner. We'll be posting shorts/reels there, I guess, of these episodes and of highlights from our film breakdowns, interviews, and hopefully more women's flag football stuff. So there you go there. Cody, am I missing anything?
Nope.
All right. If I am, that's on you.
That's fine.
I have been one of your co-hosts, Simon Villanos, a.k.a. Coach V.
And I have been one of your other co-hosts, Cody, and I'm just going to blame it on the CTE if something did get forgot. So it's just going to keep rolling downhill.
And I'm Gideon Igner, and you can't blame anything on CTE if I forgot it, but hopefully I didn't.
We'll just all blame CT collectively. But we will catch you later. Listen to our other episodes.